The call came through the radio, calm but unsettling. Strange sounds reported inside the building, unsure if anyone's inside. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackling of flames visible against the dark winter sky. It was a bitterly cold night in Sleepy Hollow, New York, and the infamous Crane Estate, a historical landmark perched above the Hudson River, was on fire. The roaring flames illuminated its grand Gothic windows and ivy-covered stone walls, creating an eerie, almost otherworldly glow. As firefighters arrived, the gathered crowd murmured uneasily, bundled against the freezing wind. "That place has always been cursed," someone whispered. "No one's lived there for years." Captain Ryan Hart, leader of Station 27, stood firm as he surveyed the scene. The fire was aggressive, feeding on the old wood and engulfing the estate's western wing. But despite the chaos, the structure's stubborn resilience told a story of its own. Beside him, rookie firefighter Kyle adjusted his helmet, his breath forming clouds in the icy air. "Looks like history's coming back to haunt us," he muttered, half joking to hide his nerves. Ryan turned to his team, Sarah Morales, a seasoned firefighter with a sharp eye for danger, and Jake Turner, the crew's calm and methodical technical expert. "Listen up," Ryan said, his voice cutting through the chatter of the crowd. "Our job is clear: save lives. I don't care about ghost stories. We stick to our training. Sarah and Jake, prepare the hoses. Kyle, stay close. We're going in." As the team began their preparations, an elderly woman emerged from the crowd, her frail hands clutching a scarf tight around her neck. "You have to find my granddaughter," she pleaded, her voice trembling. She went in there. She thought she heard something." Her desperation was palpable, but her pale, tear-streaked face betrayed more than fear. It was as though she was haunted by something she couldn't put into words. Ryan nodded. "We'll find her," he said firmly. But as he turned back to his crew, Sarah froze, her eyes fixed on an upper window of the estate. "Captain," she said, her voice low, "I saw someone moving up there." Ryan followed her gaze, but the flames licking the edge of the window revealed nothing except broken glass and flickering shadows. His jaw tightened. If someone's inside, we're getting them out. With sirens wailing in the distance and snow beginning to fall, the team moved toward the blazing entrance. The cold air was biting, but the heat from the fire hit like a wall. As they stepped into the mansion, the weight of the unknown pressed down harder than the smoke-filled air. Whatever was waiting inside, it wasn't just fire they would have to face. Inside the Crane Estate, the contrast between the icy cold outside and the suffocating heat within was staggering. Flames danced along the wooden beams of the grand entryway, casting distorted shadows on the walls. Ryan Hart led the team through the smoky chaos, his flashlight beam cutting through the haze. "Kyle, stay close!" Ryan barked over the roar of the fire. The rookie nodded, gripping his Halligan tool tightly. Behind them, Sarah Morales and Jake Turner unspooled hoses, ready to fight the flames threatening to engulf the central staircase. The Crane Estate was infamous in Sleepy Hollow. Built in the 1800s, it had been abandoned for decades, a relic of a wealthy past. Locals avoided the estate, claiming it was cursed after a string of tragedies befell its owners. Tonight, those rumors felt unnervingly real. The Grand Hall was an architectural marvel, even in its deteriorated state. Ornate chandeliers hung precariously from charred ceilings, and the walls were adorned with faded murals of serene countryside scenes, a stark contrast to the destruction unfolding. "This place is a maze," Sarah muttered, her voice muffled by her breathing apparatus. She gestured toward a narrow hallway that branched off to the right. "If that girl's here, we need to move fast. The structure won't hold much longer," Ryan agreed. "Sarah and Jake, take the left wing. Kyle, you're with me. Stay on comms." He adjusted his radio and led the rookie up the grand staircase, which groaned under their weight. As they ascended, the air grew thicker, the smoke nearly impenetrable. Kyle's voice wavered. "Captain, what if she's not here? What if—" "She's here," Ryan cut him off firmly. "We don't leave anyone behind." The second floor was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and ornate, albeit crumbling doors. As Ryan and Kyle moved cautiously, The radio crackled. "Captain, we've got movement on our side," Jake reported. "Could be her. Checking now." Ryan acknowledged, but his gut told him otherwise. There was something unexplainable about this fire. It wasn't behaving like any he'd seen before. The flames seemed to linger in strange patterns, almost as if they were alive, deliberately consuming specific parts of the mansion while sparing others. Kyle pointed to a door at the end of the hallway, its handle glowing faintly from the heat. "There, Captain," he said. Ryan nodded, kicking the door open. Inside was a library, its shelves engulfed in flames. Books disintegrated into ash as embers rained from the ceiling. And then they heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound, almost like whispering, emanating from deeper within the room. "Help!" A voice barely audible broke through the crackling fire. Ryan's heart raced. "Stay close, Kyle. We're not alone in here." The two moved toward the sound, stepping over debris and ducking under collapsing beams. The whispers grew louder, almost as if the fire itself was speaking. At the back of the room, they found a trap door slightly ajar, smoke curling from its edges. "She's down there," Ryan said, more certain than ever. Kyle hesitated. "Captain, this doesn't feel right." Ryan met his gaze. "Neither does leaving someone behind. Let's move." With that, he pulled the trapdoor open, revealing a dark, smoke-filled staircase descending into the unknown. Ryan Hart descended the narrow staircase into the basement, his flashlight cutting through the thick, swirling smoke. Kyle followed hesitantly, his breathing uneven as the oppressive heat bore down on them. The air here felt different, heavier, colder, despite the fire raging above them. The basement was vast, far larger than it seemed from outside the mansion. Brick walls lined with cobwebs stretched endlessly into shadow, and the floor was littered with debris. The faint cry for help echoed once again, leading them deeper into the eerie space. "Stay sharp," Ryan whispered, scanning the darkness. The light of their flashlights fell on strange objects as they moved. An antique piano coated in soot, a cracked mirror reflecting their distorted forms, and shelves lined with melted candles. It was as if the mansion had been frozen in time. Suddenly, Kyle stumbled, catching himself against a support beam. "Captain," he said, voice trembling. "This place, it's giving me the creeps." Before Ryan could respond, the sound of splintering wood echoed behind them. They both spun around to see the staircase collapse, the flames from above licking at the edges of the trapdoor. Their way out was gone. "We're not trapped," Ryan said firmly, though his jaw clenched. "There's always a way. Focus." Kyle nodded, his grip tightening on his Halligan tool. The radio crackled to life. "Ryan, do you copy?" Sarah's voice was strained. "The fire's spreading faster than we expected. Structural integrity is failing. What's your status?" "We're in the basement," Ryan replied. "The staircase collapsed. We're following a voice. It's faint, but we think it's the girl. Keep the hoses ready. We'll need an exit when we're back topside." "Roger that. Be careful," Sarah said before static overtook the signal. As they pressed onward, the temperature seemed to drop further, an inexplicable chill that made Kyle shiver despite the fire gear. The cries for help grew louder, interspersed with strange noises, a soft humming, almost melodic. "What is that?" Kyle asked, his voice barely audible. Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he stopped abruptly, shining his flashlight ahead. In the beam, they saw a door, its wood scorched but intact, with an ornate brass handle. The cries were coming from the other side. "Stay close," Ryan ordered, pushing the door open. The room beyond was unlike anything they had expected. It was a small chamber, untouched by fire. In the center, a young girl sat curled up on the floor, her face pale and streaked with tears. She looked up at them, her eyes wide with fear and something else, relief. "Help me," she whispered. Kyle rushed forward, but Ryan held him back. Something about the room felt off. The air was too still, and the walls seemed to hum faintly, almost imperceptibly. "It's okay," Ryan said, kneeling cautiously. "We're here to get you out." The girl nodded, but before they could move, the sound of groaning metal filled the air. Above them, the ceiling trembled, bits of debris falling as the fire closed in. "Captain!" Kyle shouted, pointing to a beam that began to crack and sag ominously. Ryan scooped the girl into his arms. "Move! Now!" The three of them bolted back the way they came, the hum from the walls growing louder as the fire seemed to chase them. Ryan's mind raced. How had the fire reached this far so quickly? And why did it feel as if the mansion itself was resisting their escape? As they neared the collapsed staircase, Kyle shouted, "There's no way up!" Ryan glanced at the trapdoor above. "We'll make one." The roar of fire above was deafening, and the air in the basement was growing suffocatingly hot. Ryan scanned the area for anything that could serve as a makeshift ladder. The girl clung tightly to him, trembling but silent, her wide eyes darting between Ryan and Kyle. "We need to get up there!" Kyle yelled over the crackling flames. Ryan's flashlight landed on a rusted shelving unit, leaning precariously against the wall. It wasn't ideal, but it was their only option. "Kyle, help me pull this over. It might hold long enough for us to climb." The two of them heaved the heavy shelf toward the trapdoor, its rusted metal groaning in protest. They positioned it as steadily as possible beneath the opening. Flames licked at the edges of the trapdoor, and embers rained down, threatening to ignite their gear. "Kyle, you go first," Ryan ordered. Kyle hesitated. "Captain, you've got the girl. You should just climb," Ryan barked, his tone leaving no room for argument. Kyle scrambled up the shaky structure, his boots slipping on the uneven surfaces. The shelf swayed under his weight, but he managed to reach the top and push the trapdoor open, clearing a path through the fire above. He extended a hand. "Pass her up." Ryan looked into the girl's frightened eyes. "You're going to be okay," he assured her, lifting her toward Kyle. The girl clutched Kyle's outstretched hand, and he hoisted her through the opening with surprising care. Once she was safely on the floor above, Kyle leaned back down. "Your turn, Captain." Ryan began his climb, but halfway up, the shelf groaned loudly and buckled under his weight. He barely managed to grip the edge of the opening as the shelving unit collapsed with a metallic crash. "Got you!" Kyle shouted, grabbing Ryan's arm and pulling with all his strength. Ryan swung a boot up, catching the edge of the floor, and pushed himself through the opening just as flames consumed the remnants of the trapdoor. The girl huddled close to Kyle as Ryan caught his breath. "We need to get out of this mansion, now!" Their radios crackled to life. Sarah's voice came through. "Ryan, the roof's about to give. Get out of there." Ryan scooped up the girl again, and they bolted through the smoke-filled hallways. The fire roared around them, the mansion seeming to groan in protest as they fought to escape. Just as the ceiling above them began to collapse, Ryan spotted a window. "There!" he shouted. With a burst of adrenaline, they dove through the window into the frigid night, landing in the snow as the mansion behind them gave one final, thunderous roar. The cold air stung their faces as Ryan, Kyle, and the girl lay in the snow, catching their breath. Behind them, the mansion was now fully consumed by flames, the inferno lighting up the winter sky. Sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup units. Ryan quickly checked the girl for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice steady but urgent. She shook her head, her small face streaked with soot. "I'm okay," she whispered. Kyle stared at the fire with wide eyes. That place went up like a matchstick. Something wasn't right in there. Ryan nodded, his own suspicions mounting. The fire had spread unnaturally fast, consuming the old wood structure with an intensity that even a seasoned firefighter like him found alarming. As they moved the girl to a waiting ambulance, Sarah and Jake approached, their faces lit with concern. "You made it out just in time," Sarah said, relief evident in her voice. "The roof came down seconds after you called in." Jake crossed his arms, his brow furrowed as he watched the flames. "This wasn't just a normal fire. Did you notice the smell? Something chemical." Ryan's thoughts went to the strange layout of the mansion, the trapdoor in the basement, and the girl they'd rescued. "There's more to this place," he said. "We need to find out why she was locked in that basement." The girl, now wrapped in a thick blanket, sat quietly in the back of the ambulance. Ryan crouched beside her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lila," she replied, her voice barely audible. "Lila, can you tell us what happened? How did you end up in that basement?" She hesitated, her eyes darting between Ryan and the burning mansion. "The man," she finally said. "He said I had to stay there, that it wasn't safe anywhere else." Ryan's heart sank. What man? Do you know his name? Lila shook her head. He was always wearing a mask, but he kept saying something about secrets, that they had to stay hidden. Before Ryan could press further, a sharp crack echoed from the mansion as the last of the structure collapsed into a heap of burning rubble. Jake's radio buzzed with new information. "Chief just called," he said grimly. Turns out the mansion belonged to a reclusive inventor, rumored to have been working on dangerous experiments before he disappeared years ago. Ryan exchanged a glance with Sarah. "Looks like we're dealing with more than just a fire." The mansion was reduced to a smoldering ruin by dawn. Wisps of smoke curled into the pale winter sky, mingling with the lingering frost. Ryan and his team gathered near the engine, exhaustion etched on their soot-streaked faces, but their minds were still racing. Detectives and fire investigators swarmed the scene, their flashlights cutting through the haze. Ryan watched as they combed through the wreckage, searching for any remnants that might explain the bizarre events of the night. Lila sat quietly in the warmth of the ambulance, still wrapped in her blanket. Her silence spoke volumes. Ryan approached her again, crouching to meet her eyes. "Lila," he began, his tone gentle but firm, "do you know what kind of secrets the man was hiding in the mansion?" She hesitated, clutching the blanket tighter. "He said it was dangerous," she whispered, "that if people found out, they'd get hurt. He made me promise to stay hidden." Before Ryan could respond, one of the investigators approached. "Captain Hart," the man said, holding up a charred metal object. "You'll want to see this." Ryan stood and followed him to a table where several recovered items had been placed. Among them was a partially melted notebook, its pages warped, but some text still legible. The investigator opened it carefully, revealing sketches of machinery and chemical formulas that looked unlike anything Ryan had seen before. "This isn't just a house fire," the investigator said grimly. "From what we can piece together, the owner was experimenting with volatile compounds, likely some kind of prototype for a new fuel source. If one of those compounds ignited..." "It explains the speed of the fire," Jake said, stepping closer, "and the strange smells in the basement." Ryan's stomach churned. Lila had been locked away in the middle of a deadly science experiment. "We need to find out who this man was and why he thought keeping her there was the safest option," he said. The detective nodded. "We'll take her into protective custody for now and dig into his background. But Captain, whatever he was working on, it could have been catastrophic if it had reached the wrong hands." As the morning sun rose higher, Ryan gathered his team. The mystery of the mansion was far from solved, but they had saved a life and prevented what could have been a far greater disaster. "This is why we do what we do," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the night's events. "For the people who can't save themselves, for moments like this." As they loaded up the engine and prepared to leave, Lila waved at them from the ambulance, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. Ryan returned the gesture, the unspoken promise clear. They'd done everything they could, and they wouldn't stop until the truth was uncovered. The mansion may have burned to ashes, but the courage and determination of the firefighters would never fade. Thanks for watching Brave Sparks. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more powerful and inspiring stories. Stay brave, and we'll see you in the next one.